Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Master Sergeant Choate, and welcome to this month's rendition of the virtual classroom. This month, what we're going to go over is we're going to go over the fundamentals of leadership. Before we start, though, I ask that everyone please mute your mics. Please wait till the end to also ask questions. At the end, you can either type your question in the chat, you can unmute your microphone and ask a question that way, or my military email will be provided on the last slide so we can get together offline. So jumping straight into the fundamentals of leadership, what I want you to do is I want you to think back to when you first found out that you were going to be a leader. You probably thought to yourself that this is going to be easy. You probably thought this is because leadership itself is easy. That there's only one way to lead, that every situation you're in calls for the same action, that every follower requires the same leadership style. Let's face it, leadership is a one-size-fits-all, right? Actually, absolutely not. This actually couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, leadership is not a single set of skills that leaders use. There are different levels, behaviors, styles of leadership that is used based on the situation and what is needed to be accomplished. By understanding the fundamentals of leadership, you will be equipped with the tools necessary to be well on your way to being an effective leader, and this is going to help propel your organization forward to success. In this lesson, we'll discuss the following main points. Main point 1, it's going to be the behaviors of leadership. Here, we'll outline both directive and supportive leadership behaviors. And then in main point 2, the styles of leadership, we'll close out the lesson by discussing directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating leadership styles. When all of this is assessed properly, the information in the main points will give you the tools necessary to understand the fundamentals of leadership and how to use them. We've discussed what the lesson is and how it's going to be taught. This lesson is important in understanding the fundamentals of leadership. We will now begin with our first main point, the behaviors of leadership. Leaders exhibit many different behaviors when it comes to their involvement with followers in task completion. They all fall into two main categories of directive and supportive, each of which are appropriate for leaders to use, but not always appropriate for leaders to use at all the time. It is going to be the responsibility of the leader to decide which is appropriate. We will discuss each behavior beginning with directive. Directive behavior involves telling people what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and then we're going to closely monitor their performance. This behavior focuses on task completion. There are 3 words that will be used to describe the key actions of leaders using this behavior: structure, teach, and lastly, supervise. Directive behavior involves creating structure for those being led. That structure comes from setting expectations, establishing processes, and organizing the tasks that are going to be completed. It involves understanding what needs to be accomplished and creating a system from available resources in order to accomplish it. In addition to kind of creating this structure, directive behavior really involves teaching. Leaders will help their followers understand what is expected of them and how to accomplish the task that they're going to be assigned to do. They take responsibility for ensuring their subordinates have the knowledge and skills needed in order to complete the job. The leader coaches their followers to help them learn and grow. And then once the appropriate structure is in place and the subordinates have been trained, the leader's attention then turns to supervising task completion. They observe and evaluate the subordinates as tasks are being accomplished. They provide positive and constructive feedback when warranted, and then take corrective action when necessary. Using directive behavior is an important part of being a successful supervisor. It ensures that the work being done is organized, that the subordinates understand how to do it, and that in the end, it gets done. Next, we're going to look at the other important type of leadership behavior, which is going to be being supportive. So we learned that directive behavior is focused on task accomplishment. Now let's take a look at the supportive behavior. This focuses on another important outcome for supervisors. Supportive behavior is targeted at the actual relationship between the supervisor and subordinate. It involves listening to people and providing encouragement and getting them involved in the problem-solving process and decision-making. It can be characterized by the following actions: ask, listen, and lastly, facilitate. One way the supervisor uses supportive behavior is to ask these questions. They solicit ideas and suggestions from their subordinates. They then get them engaged in more than just doing the task that they're being asked to do. And then lastly, they use questions as a great tool to help the subordinates learn. In addition to asking these questions, a supervisor using supportive behavior also listens to their followers. They not only listen to the answers to the questions, but also the thoughts and ideas that the subordinates share. They use listening to get to know their subordinates as people. Supervisors also help facilitate their subordinates' involvement and sense of belonging in the organization. They help them create and maintain relationships and feel like they're an actual part of the team. So now that we just talked about the behaviors of leadership, understand when to be directive and then when to be supportive is actually going to be a crucial part when it comes to leading these followers. Next, what we're going to look at is the styles of leadership. So there are many different leadership models encompassing various styles of leadership, and they're all available to leaders today. However, the styles of leadership that we're going to focus on for this lesson are going to be directing, coaching, supporting, and lastly, delegating. These come from Dr. Paul Hershey's and Ken Blanchard's situational leadership model. In this model, the leader determines how directive and supportive they're going to be based on the follower's competence and commitment. A good rule of thumb for this is that the lower the follower's competent, the higher the leader's directive behavior should be. And then the lower the follower's commitment, the higher the leader's supportive behavior should be, and vice versa. This theory's main goal is to advocate that not one of the four styles work best at all times. It is up to the leader to adapt their behavior to the developmental skills of their followers for these tasks to be completed. So over the next couple slides, you're going to hear me use words like competence, commitment. Well, competence, when I talk about competence, what I'm talking about is the follower's knowledge, training, skills, and expertise. When we touch on commitment, I'm really digging into their enthusiasm and confidence. So now that we understand that, let's look at the styles of leadership. The first one is going to be directive or directing. Here, the leader is going to show high directive skills but low supportive skills. The leader provides specific direction to the follower about the roles and closely track their performance to provide frequent feedback. For an example, this is kind of like an airman first coming out of basic training or tech school. When they get to their brand new base, they go to a thing called FTAC. This is basically showing the airmen the ins and outs of the organization. What mission are we actually trying to accomplish here? As a leader, that is also your goal when you get somebody brand new to the unit. Show them the ins and outs. Show them what their AFSC is about. Make sure that they fit where necessary. The next one is going to be coaching. Here the leader is going to have high directive and high supportive. Here the leader continues to direct and closely supervise task accomplishment, but also begins to explain why. Here they also solicit suggestions and praise progress. What I think of for an example of this is think about coaching a middle school basketball team or a high school football team. Here the players have competence in the sport or what they're supposed to do. But the coach's role here is to really play off of the players' strengths and weaknesses and fit them directly into a role that's going to help the team accomplish their mission the best. It's the exact same for the military. It's the exact same for the Air Force. Now we're going to get into supporting. This comes after the coaching. After they've been coached, now we're going to go into the supporting role, which is the low directive, high supportive. Here the leader facilitates interactions with others, listens to their people, encourages and supports them, but provides little direction. The way I like to look at this is, as you were growing up, you were learning to ride a bike. As you're learning to ride a bike, you could have training wheels or you could not. You are going to fall. You are going to fall off, bump your head, scrape your knee. But what did your parents do? Or whoever was watching after you? They picked you back up, set you on the bike, dusted you off, told you it was going to be okay, and then kind of gave you that nudge to start riding that bike again. That's what we should be doing as supervisors. Our airmen are going to have setbacks in their career. How do we handle that? How do we support them? How do we encourage them to keep moving forward? And that's our job. The last one that we're going to touch on is going to be the delegating. Here, the leader should be low in directive and low in supportive. The leader at this point is going to empower the people to act independently while providing the appropriate resources. This is when, after you've been supported and you've fallen off that bike, now you fully get it. You fully are riding the bike with no training wheels. You can do this on your own. You know the mission. Your airmen know the mission. They know what they're supposed to do, and they require little to, if at all, any over the shoulder. So now that we've really talked about directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating, I want to get into a quote by one of the founders of the SL2 theory, Ken Blanchard. He states that there is nothing so unequal as the equal treatment of unequals. Now, that sounds like a mouthful because of all the equals and unequals, but basically what it's saying, and I like to use my kids as an example since I'm a father of two. Both of my kids, of course, they're one's 3, one's 8, but they both have different temperaments. They both have different personalities. So me as a parent, I would be failing if I tried to parent both of my kids the exact same way when they are completely different human beings. They're not the same person. Us as leaders, when we step into our office or we step on that flight line or we walk into FSS or wherever we work on base, and if we try to lead our airmen, our followers in that same manner, it's literally going to lead to destruction. You cannot lead everyone the exact same way. So now that we've got that in mind, let's look at the followers themselves and the progress that they go on within their competence and commitment. So you're going to have airmen that are going to start out, and typically these are going to be called your enthusiastic beginners. These are the airmen that are fresh out of tech school, fresh out of basic training, and what they have is they have that low competence because they don't necessarily know their job, but they have super high commitment, right? This is after they've been blued. We've all heard that term. They've been blued. They've gone to basic training, tech school. So they're excited, they're rearing, they're ready to go. These are your enthusiastic beginners. Now, as they get some time under their belt, they might have more competence, but maybe their commitment is now dwindling. And this could be because of some setbacks in their career. Maybe they didn't get BTZ. Maybe they didn't get Airman of the Quarter, and now they're feeling a little beat. Maybe they didn't get the AFSC they wanted. These are going to be your disillusioned learners. So they know what they're doing, they understand the job, but the commitment's just not all there. Now, as you progress forward, you are going to have airmen that are now moderately competent. They understand the job. These, I would like to say, 5 levels, 3-year senior airman, staff sergeant tops at this point. But their commitment, it varies. They could have really high commitment one day, or they could have really low commitment the next day. Our job is to kind of help them in this area. So these are going to be our cautious performers. The last tier of this in the follower development process is going to be the airmen or the followers that have the really high competence and really high commitment. These are your self-reliant achievers. I like to think of these people as our tech sergeants, as our 7 levels. They know the job, they know how to do it, they understand why they're AFSC and how it is benefiting to the bigger picture of the Air Force, so they've got that commitment. Now, how do we match those leadership styles we talked about earlier with the follower development? Well, one thing that we need to realize first, right, is if we have airmen with low competence, as a leader, we should meet them with high direction. And then next, if we've got followers that have low commitment, they need to be met with high support. High support is what they need. So now let's match these two up, the leadership styles and the follower development. So we talked about earlier our enthusiastic beginners. Remember, these are the people with the low competence, but the high commitment. What they need is they need a leader that is going to direct them with the high directive, low support. Remember, these are typically going to be your people that are fresh out of tech school, fresh out of BMT. Maybe these are student flight individuals for our guard units. That's what these people are. So they need the directing. Now, once you go up at that disillusioned learner, remember, these people have some competence, low commitment. They need the leadership style of coaching. That's that high directive with high support. Next, our cautious performers. These are the people that their competence is growing. They're understanding the job, but their commitment is high, it could be low. They're going to need that supporting role. The leader that is low with directive, but high in support. And last but not least, you've got the self-reliant achiever. These are the people that are high in competence and high in commitment, and what they require is the delegation. Somebody that's low with the directive and low with the support. Now, one thing to note, you do not want to mix these up. And what I mean by mix these up is, you don't want to set a leader that is strong with the delegation, and that's what they do, with an enthusiastic beginner. Because what that's going to do is it's going to make that enthusiastic beginner not really understand what they're supposed to do. They might have little to no direction at this point. But at the exact same time, you don't want to go the directing approach with the self-reliant achiever, because at that point they can feel like they're being micromanaged. And that can actually cause them to shut down. So please make sure that you are setting your airmen up for success, your followers up for success, and using the correct leadership style with the follower development. Now, lastly, this is kind of just a chart to put it all together. This chart shows, at the bottom you can see in red going to green for the follower, it shows how the follower develops. And as the follower develops through the red, the orange, the yellow, and the green, as leaders, we need to make sure that we are giving them the correct leadership style. So going from a brand new airman, they could need that directing from the leader. Because remember, they could be fresh out of tech school, fresh out of basic. Or maybe this could just be somebody that they might be a master sergeant, but they have since then changed to AFSCs. So now, say a maintainer's going into services, they know nothing about that services career field, so they're going to need some of that directing. Now, as you're moving forward in that developmental process, the leader is going to adapt. Now the leader's going to coach. Then the leader's going to support. And then finally, the delegation stage. But one thing to note here, as you're looking at this, is you want to make sure that you understand that this graph is not finite. This is not set in stone. That there are ebbs and flows that followers go through, and that they could be at that delegation stage and then something crazy happen in their life or their military career, and now you've got to take them back to that coaching role because that's what they need at that moment in time. So just understand, this does ebb and flow. It is not finite. It is not concrete. So moving forward right here, why is this important? Why is everything that I've talked about up until this part important? Is because if we want to be successful, we need to make sure that we are identifying our followers' needs. Remember, not every single follower is going to require the exact same thing. Are we meeting the follower development with the correct leadership style? And lastly, adapting your leadership style. Make sure that you adapt. Make sure that you can go from that directing to coaching to supporting to the delegating. And if you're a supervisor or you have supervisors underneath you that have 3, 4, 5, 6 senior airmen in their chain of command, and these are the people that they're signing their EPRs, make sure that they know, or you know, that you cannot treat every single airman the exact same way, because what it's going to do is it can cause a rift. It can cause your airmen to be stagnant, and it could hit on morale. So, with all of that being said, so far today we've went over the styles of leadership, and we did this based off of the SL2 theory. This is important because it gives the leaders a model to follow based on the competence and maturity, and can be applied to every situation and every follower. Now that we've done that, let's wrap up this lesson. So in this lesson, we covered 2 main points regarding the fundamentals of leadership. In main point 1, we talked about the behaviors of leadership. We highlighted 2 behaviors of leadership demonstrated by leaders, with directive behavior that focused heavily on task completion, with the emphasis being placed on the leader being directly involved with the followers. The main point then continued from directive to the supportive behavior, which is targeted at the relationships themselves between the supervisor and subordinate. It is crucial for a leader to determine the correct time to demonstrate each of these behaviors. Lastly, we finished up with the lesson with main point 2. We talked about the styles of leadership here. We discussed the 4 styles of leadership used by Dr. Kenneth Blanchard and Paul Hershey's SL2 theory, or also known as the situational leadership model. These were directing, supporting, coaching, and lastly, delegating. The main point described the correct level of followers' competence and commitment that is appropriate for the use of each leadership style. This provides a framework model for leaders to use in every situation that they are leading their followers through. Remember, there are different levels, behaviors, and styles of leadership that is used based on the situation and what task is needing to be accomplished. Now that we've had this lesson, you are properly equipped with the tools necessary to be well on your way to being an effective leader. Once again, leadership can be complicated, but starting with the fundamentals can make you a more effective leader. Thank you all for sitting here through the fundamentals of leadership. Once again, my name is Master Sergeant Joshua Choate, and thank you for sitting here with me during this virtual classroom. At this time, I am taking questions. Once again, you can unmute your mic and ask a question, or you can type one in the chat, or if you want to meet with me offline, my email is available on the final slide right there. It is joshua.choate.4@us.af.mil. So if y'all have any questions, yes, sir. I think we have one question. I see one hand raised. You can just unmute your mic and ask. Or you can also put it in the chat if you're having some mic issues.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear?
Hi, sir. Can you hear me
I can.
now?
How are you doing, ma'am?
Okay. I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm borrowing my counterpart's sign on. My name is Sergeant Bonilla, and the question I had was, how do we know what type of leadership we are? Is there like a test, a survey, or how does our subordinates know what type of learning style they follow?
Yes, ma'am. So I actually do have a survey. So each of us are going to tend to be more one of those 4 leadership styles. But we do have a survey. And if you want to, you can send me an email to that joshua.choate.4@us.af.mil. Or after all this is done, I can stick it in the chat. But I do have a survey that I can send you out that will help. And you can actually print this off and give it to everybody in your organization, and this is going to help them really pinpoint themselves kind of where they fall on those 4 and what's kind of their preferred method.
Okay, copy that. I'll email you, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any hands being raised. So if you don't want to ask a question here, remember you can send an email. But if there is nothing further, and like I don't want to cut anybody off, so I will give y'all a couple, like 30 seconds to a minute or so to still ask your questions. But if nobody does have any further questions, I just want to thank y'all for being here with me today. I really do appreciate the views that we got for this. I do hope everybody has a fantastic holiday. And please tune back in anytime we do these monthly professional developments because it helps us out and we know it helps you all out as well. So thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
TEC University. Education your way.